Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. My name is Jackson Mummy, and each week we'll be bringing you updated information about the bar exam and what you need to do in order to make the next bar exam your last bar exam. Ready to get started? Let's jump to it. Welcome. Today is Wednesday, April 5th, and we are excited to have you here. Good to see everybody. Welcome in a holiday week. Probably pretty quiet for us and quiet for most of you who are studying, and we hope everyone has a good holiday coming up this weekend. If you are celebrating, we are glad to have you with us. What we are going to be doing today is talking a little bit about the results that have started to come out across the country from the February exams. We're going to talk a little bit about some changes to the Florida bar exam, which are fairly significant. And we're going to be talking about Bootcamp coming up, and we're excited about that. And then we've got some questions that have come up over the past week or so, and we're going to answer those. And then Tracy has promised to take us all on a virtual discussion of SeaWorld. Glad to have you guys with us. If you are live with us, that's great. If you are watching or listening on replay, we're glad to have you here. And if you are watching or listening to our podcast, we're glad to have you as well. I wanted to start today by talking about the early results that we are getting around the country. And I think it's important to caveat this by saying that this is the very early tip of the iceberg, and things change, and we will see more and know more a week from now when Florida results are. But this process of waiting for results is tough, isn't it, Amanda? Just sitting there and just, when's it going to happen?
Absolutely, Jackson. And it's hard to put myself back there and know what everyone is feeling. But if you're feeling that anxiety, that when is it going to come, opening the email every day, if you're feeling all of that, all of us have definitely been there before.
Yeah, it's really hard to hold yourself in that stasis, right? I'm ready to get my results, but they're not here, and I'm waiting, and I'm on edge. And I know that for a lot of people in Florida, we've got the holiday coming up this weekend, and they're going to be with family and friends, and everybody's going to be saying, "How did you do on the bar exam?" And well, I don't know yet. And then boom, it all happens on Monday or Tuesday, and everybody goes crazy. So the best you can do is take a deep breath and just wait. The results will be here. Now, if you're in California or Georgia, just keep waiting. It's going to take a while. New York and Texas, I think we're going to see probably later this month in April, but it takes a while. And there's a bunch of UBE jurisdictions where we just wait and see what happens. But I wanted to share with you what we do know now. And there's a great resource. The NCBE has a page where they update the actual results as they're being reported and coming in. And that's the official reporting. So that's what we use. You'll see a lot of different numbers and rates out there. Sometimes they get really fouled up because people will report, the media will report only a first-time bar taker rate. And that's not very reflective. And so you just got to be aware of that. So let me tell you what we've got so far now. The biggest jurisdiction that's come back is Illinois. And the overall pass rate in Illinois was 43%, and the repeater pass rate was 35%. When you hear numbers like that's sobering, I'm not going to lie. When we're under 50% for an overall test, that is going to be problematic. And I'll tell you that we've got several jurisdictions now that are less than 50% overall pass rate. But one of the things you want to keep in mind is that the sample size for most of these states is pretty small. We're looking at Illinois, New Mexico, North Carolina, West Virginia, and Kansas. That's pretty much it. I think Nebraska might have released as well. And these are small states, and things can really jump around, show up pretty differently. In New Mexico, the overall pass rate was 44% with a 24% repeat pass rate. Now, I went back and looked at last February's rates in New Mexico, and they were much, much higher. So the question that inevitably comes up, is that a trend? Does it mean something? The answer in a state like New Mexico is no, it doesn't mean anything. The sample size is ridiculously small, less than 100 bar takers. So you got to be careful with these numbers. But Illinois, New Mexico, and North Carolina, West Virginia, Kansas, all are UBE jurisdictions. So I think that part is interesting to see. In North Carolina, the pass rate overall was 47%. So that's three jurisdictions under 50. And the repeat pass rate in North Carolina was only 29%. So that's pretty tough. When we get to West Virginia, a little better, 55% overall, 56% repeat. But again, small sample size. So something we just have to be pretty careful about checking and making sure. And then finally, Kansas, 51% overall, 38% repeat. So what do those numbers tell us? They tell us that the exam was tough. They tell us that the rates are going to continue to be low. I think when we see repeater rates at 24 to 38%, it's about where we've been historically, and it continues to be that way. The other piece of information that we have about results is that the MBE, which we now know across the country, even though they haven't been reported in jurisdictions by jurisdiction, the overall MBE score went down 1.5 points. So, question is, what does a 1.5 point drop in the MBE mean? The answer is it's significant. That means a lot. 1.5 points average dropping across the board could indicate one of two things. The test was harder, or the composition of people taking the exam was different. I think that the composition of the February exam is different. You tend to get more repeat bar takers, and by definition, that tends to reduce your scoring. But I think we also have to be aware that the exam is still pretty difficult to deal with. So that's my take on it. Amanda, what do you see when you look at these numbers? Anything jump out at you?
I think that the numbers can be easily discouraging. And I think that we have a long way to go as a profession, right? I don't think that this reflects, I think there's been like conversation if you go down the Google or Reddit rabbit hole, how well is law school preparing bar takers for the exam? But then also, would you want to pay and invest in a law school experience that only prepares you to take this exam? So I think we have a long way to go, right, as a profession, and how this exam fits in with accurately reflecting the law school experience and the lived experience of lawyers and what we need to do to prepare. I know you're going to talk about like Florida changes, whether that's in line with that or a step back, I guess we'll wait to see. And we know that we have changes coming up in the future, but I would say for our hopefuls out there or people who maybe didn't pass by just 1 point or so, to continue to remember it is not a reflection of you, that this is a flawed system in many ways where we're definitely not close to perfect yet. So it's easy to be discouraged, but try to keep some perspective here. I don't think that looking at these numbers are, I think more than this percent in each of these states listed here are qualified to be lawyers and have the minimum competence to be lawyers.
Yeah, it seems when I look at Illinois, which is the only jurisdiction that's got a significant number of bar takers, a 43% overall rate just is ridiculous. And what that tells me as a leading edge, if you will, is that we are probably looking at less than 50% pass rates in the major jurisdictions, Florida, California, New York, Texas. That's probably what we're looking at there as well. You can't necessarily read a lot into the non-UBE jurisdictions from the UBE scores, but you can tell that the MBE is going to be down, and that's going to be a significant impact. Tracy, you were making a comment before we went live about the phrasing and the mindset that kind of goes around this. Do you want to share that thought?
Yeah, when I first jumped on to working with you all, I heard a lot of failure language. Failed by 2 points, failed by 20 points. If you fail, then this is, what? And I think that reframing starts at the very beginning here, and it starts with that word, just to jettison that word out of our vocabulary as coaches, and yours, Jackson, as the guru of this thing, and to really reframe it into did not pass, which is a totally different concept because failure are judgmental words. And we tend to internalize those. And then we think of ourselves as a failure. This is a test. This is not does not make you either successful as a human or a failure as a human. So I'm looking to help us reframe to did not pass as a different way to talk about the score and did pass, was successful.
Yeah,
Sh- Really, the statistics are one thing, but it's your email that matters.
exactly. There's a 0 or 100%. That those are the numbers that really matter. And I think your framing idea is correct.
If you look at who failed,
Yeah.
the state bars failed. 43% of people didn't pass, right? That's what
Yeah.
I'm reading. Nor
Yeah.
44, that's a failure on our system. I really do think that. Allegedly, all these, I don't think any of these states are states that offer like apprenticeship, right? It's only, I'm probably speaking out of turn, but I don't, it's not, I
No.
think maybe only Vermont, Connecticut used to have it a long time ago. I don't know if they still do, but how could that, I don't think that's reflected on an individual. I really don't think those numbers could possibly reflect that.
Yeah, I don't
Uh,
think they do. And
yeah.
the students that we work with, I think it's pretty clear they're putting in a lot of time and effort, and we should see better results across the board. I think that one of the takeaways from these early numbers, beyond what both of you have said, which I think is perfectly valid, is you cannot wander into the bar exam.
Mm,
Just isn't going to happen. I had a conversation with someone today who was thinking about retaking the exam and had taken the exam a couple years ago. And I said, look, you can wander into the test, but you are not going to succeed on the test doing it that way. You've really got to be committed. You got to get all in on the preparation. And that means doing the assignments and doing the writing and creating the mind maps and putting in the effort. And I know, Amanda, when you were studying for the bar, you put in an enormous amount of effort, it paid off. When Tracy and I took the bar back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, we had to put in a fair amount of effort. Somebody wrote, we have a Facebook ad, I think it is. And somebody, as they often do, they hijack your post and they said, I passed the bar 35 years ago by going into the hotel for a weekend and having a bottle of Jim Beam, and that's all I needed. I was like, yeah, 35 years ago, that's probably all it took. But today, you try that, brother, and see what happens. You're going to get the snot kicked out of you. And so I think that there's this mindset that comes around the exam that says, oh, I went to law school, I should be able to pass. And in a perfect world, if the bar was doing its job properly, that's exactly what would happen. But when we're seeing these big jurisdictions that can't get 50% of the applicants to pass the exam, that's insane. And so that's the world we live in. The next generation bar exam will come along in 2025 or 2026. Maybe it'll make a difference, I hope. But until then, you got to be all in, I think, to pass the exams. In any event, those are the numbers that we have. It's a very small sample size. As I say, next Wednesday, we're going to know a lot more when Florida comes back with their results. And I just want to caution all of you, when those results, it's tough to get onto these big websites like Florida, New York, Massachusetts, Texas, California. Be patient. When you get your results, let us know, please. Uh, for those who have succeeded and passed the exam, that's terrific. We are very excited and we will be in touch with you. And for those of you that have not yet succeeded on the exam, don't give up. Just let us know. We've got a protocol to help you and work with you. And we are glad to do that. And there's no judgment here. I think you can hear very clearly in our minds that we think that this is more about the test than about the individual. And so please don't be embarrassed. I think that's one of the things that I get most frustrated about is someone is not successful on the exam and they basically foxhole. They just don't tell us. And then we can't do anything to help. So we have a lifetime pass guarantee. We make that available to everyone who's in our course, and we encourage you, if you need to use it, to do so. You just hang in there. You'll get your results when your state decides to release them. If you're in New York, you won't know. It's just a surprise. Everybody else, we pretty much know the dates. I'm going to move over to the Florida changes. And again, for those of you that are not in Florida, forgive me, but we have obviously a big population that takes this exam. The Florida examiners are doing something that I think we're going to see replicated in California and Georgia. And that is that, as I mentioned, in 2025, 2026, there will be something called the Next Generation Bar Exam. This is being written by the National Conference of Bar Examiners. And Amanda, I know you've been following this a bit, as Brianna has as well. And it's going to be a different form of the test. The multi-state bar exam is going away, which is pretty crazy, but it is going away. And I think that's a good thing in general. But if you are not part of the uniform bar exam, if you're not in a jurisdiction that does that, and there are about 40 of those, your jurisdiction has a problem. And that is, what do they do to replace day 2 of the bar exam now that the MBE is going away? And the jurisdictions that mostly affects are California, Georgia, and Florida. There are a few others, but those are the 3 big ones. And in those jurisdictions, they are now starting to modify what they're doing in anticipation of this change in 2025 or 2026. We keep saying that because we don't know exactly when the new exam will take effect. There's actually going to be an overlap period of a couple of years, it looks like. In any event, in order to start making those changes, each of these 3 states are starting to adapt their bar exam or talking about it, changing it. In a later episode, we will talk about the changes in California. Potentially, they're still talking. They haven't made any decisions, but Florida made a decision, and in typical Florida fashion, just dropped it on everybody a couple days ago with no warning and said it's going to be effective for July 2023. Oh, great. Thanks. Appreciate that. So here's what's changing in Florida specifically. Starting with the July 2023, the next exam, 3 subjects that have historically been tested in an essay format on day 1 are now being switched to a multiple choice format on day 1. Those 3 subjects are Article 3 and 9 of the UCC, so negotiable instruments and secured transactions, which, by the way, suddenly has become morphed into 1 subject. It was 2 subjects before, but now it's 1 subject for the Florida bar. And then the other subject is trusts, which I find very interesting. If you're old like me, there was a time when trusts were tested in Florida as multiple choice. Then they were tested as essays. Then during COVID, they were tested a little bit as multiple choice. That was weird because that came out of nowhere. And then they went back to essays. And now this week, the bar is announcing it can be tested as multiple choice. So what does that mean in practice? First thing is, it means you don't have to write practice essays for negotiable instruments, secured transactions, or trusts if you're a Florida bar taker. And we have made those changes in your online course already. What we also have done is to start to create multiple choice questions for each of those 3 subjects. We had some for trust because of the earlier changes. We did not have multiple choice questions for Article 3 or Article 9. Those have not been tested in that format anywhere in the country. We're in the process of preparing those questions. And actually, we've made a lot of progress. The editors have been working hard. And we should have those questions online for you within, I think, maybe the next week or so. And we've modified your study plan and the online course so that you'll have access to those questions and you'll see the differences. If you are a Florida bar taker, I have posted a video in which I explain these changes and I explain what you need to do to take advantage of it. You will see it under the course introduction in your Florida online course. You'll also see it in our community group. Now, what does that mean in the big context? It doesn't mean it's impossible that these subjects will be tested in essay format, but the examiners seem to be leaning towards choice. And the reason that they're doing that, I believe, in Florida is that they are in the process of creating their own equivalent of the multi-state bar exam. So I think what's going to happen in Florida, now we have 3 essays and then 3 subjects of Florida subjects, multiple choice, and then the MBE. I think where we're headed is 6 essays in Florida. And then the second day, they'll do a full day of Florida multiple choice. The Florida examiners are enamored with their ability to write multiple choice questions. That is a false pride on their part. They are bad at writing questions. They are terrible questions, and they've always been terrible questions. That'll make me a lot of friends in Tallahassee, but that's the reality. And I think that's what they're doing. And I think they're starting to build a test bank on these other subjects. So when you add Article 3, Article 9, and trusts, I think what you're going to see is that's the beginning of starting a full day of Florida multiple choice. So I think that's where we're headed in Florida. It would be nice if they'd given us a little more warning, but there you go. I think that's the essence of what's going on. The other thing I would say about Florida is that they have come up with what they call subject specifications, which I wish every jurisdiction did. I bang on the Florida examiners a lot, but they did something I think was really good here. They actually came up with a brief outline of what they said would be testable on day one of their exam, which I think is wonderful to know what's actually testable and what's not. The NCBE has been doing this for years on their subjects, and Florida has never been, they've been very secretive about it. So they just released those, and we are in the process of putting those into the course, number one, so that you can see them as a student. But number two, we're also doing a review of our own outlines to make sure that we're conforming and covering them. And I will say this, because I know people tend to get freaked out about stuff like this. We've already looked at 3 or 4 of the outlines against those specifications as we're recording today, and we are 95% there already. Not a whole lot has changed. It's just that they're actually being more open about the process. So that's what's going on in Florida. It's a bit weird, but I think we're going to see the same thing in California and maybe in Georgia. One thing I would say about this for everybody, if you're not in Florida and you're going, man, what do I care? Watch what's going on in your state. Follow the emails, follow the website, be aware. The examiners do not announce these things, just drop them. I mean, this just dropped about 5 days ago with no warning at all. It's just now getting some publicity. We watch it carefully, but you should be watching it as well.
I say again, it mirrors law practice. Get used to things changing on a dime and don't get thrown off your game by that. You got to be a gamer, and that means you've got to be aware of the changing landscape and ahead of the curve. Really,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
don't worry about it. Just lean into it.
And then when you get to the other side, which you will, right, you can advocate for the change that you want. I think that's really important as people remember their why, right? Bring up these conversations and challenge them and be a part of them when you can, when you get there, right?
Yeah. And I know that, Amanda, you've been very vocal about trying to move forward on these changes. And it's much appreciated. I know Brianna's doing the same thing, and other students that we've had have gone in and just really made an impact in their state bars. We'll get you through it. We are prepared. I think we're way ahead of the curve on these changes in Florida. I have not seen another bar review that's even mentioned the changes, much less made any amendments to their materials. So if you're in our course, you're set. If you're not in our course, I can assure you that our students will be prepared, and you ought to consider this for your Florida bar exam. So will there be changes in other jurisdictions? My guess is yes. And we'll watch those. California is the one I'm watching now next. We'll see what they do. Florida may be testing the waters here a little bit, and we'll see how other non-UBE jurisdictions go. If you're in a UBE jurisdiction like New York or Texas or Massachusetts, your exam is staying exactly where it is for now, and the transition will happen in a few years' time. So that's where we are in results and in changes, and we'll try and keep everybody up to date on that. Before we turn to student questions, there's one more thing I do want to talk about, and that is our live boot camp coming up here in Denver on May 19th and 20th. We've had some questions about what is boot camp and should I go and does it make a difference? The boot camp experience is a 2-day experience in which you are going to get hands-on training. There are 3 of us that are going to be coaching. Tracy will be there, June will be there, and I'll be there. And I'm going to be teaching photo reading. And even if you're not a photo reader, I will show you how to be a photo reader in just a few hours and how to then apply it to writing essays, to taking multiple choice, and to doing performance tests if that applies. You're going to have the chance to do some actual writing. That's why we call it a boot camp. So you will actually be preparing work. And I have the ability to watch what you're doing. Tracy will be watching some of that as well. and we'll see how you're doing with the work, directing and showing you how to improve your study process. June will be working on mindset. We'll be doing some breakout sessions with her, and those are incredibly valuable sessions to have. And Tracy will be working with us in a hybrid form, a little bit of the writing and the technique, but also really just from the perspective of practicing lawyer. And I think that's really valuable. All of our group coaches, Tracy, Amanda, Brianna, and Bobka, have all practiced. And there's something to be said for actually saying, what is this value in the practice of law? And so we're going to be talking about those things as well and showing you how to apply them, how to take notes, how to think about problems, how to work through them in a more, I think, a more positive way. Tracy's presence there is really valuable for me because it gives me the opportunity to split up a little bit of the writing coaching and each of us taking a few people at a time and talking through the writing and seeing what they're doing and seeing how it comes out. You'll leave the weekend knowing how to photo read, knowing how to mind map, and how to apply those skills for every part of the exam and working on mindset. The real value, I think, for a lot of people at the boot camp is that they create these connections with other students. It's a live experience. It's a really good bonding experience. It's a great learning experience in terms of what other people are doing and what their stories have been and where they are. We are keeping the size of this boot camp very small. We did one in Florida last October, and we kept it small, and I loved it. I thought it was really helpful for the students that were there. When we did boot camps originally, we had 40 or 50 people there. It was a lot, and it was too much. And so we're holding this to 15. And the way that you get into boot camp is that you pay a application fee, which is fully refundable and can be applied to your fee. And all you have to do is go to our website, click on boot camp. You'll be taken to the application. Purpose of the application is we want to know why you want to come to boot camp, what you want to get out of it. I have found that if you're going to spend the time and the money, you ought to have a pretty clear why. And so we want to make sure that you've got that. So we have opened enrollment, but it will sell out. It always does. And so we encourage you to check that out. The fee for boot camp is lower now than it will be when we get closer to the date. And everything is included except your travel and hotel. We're in a small town outside of Denver called Parker, and there's plenty of hotels that are affordable there. And we have a wonderful facility that we're going to be using. And I'm really excited about it. What about you, Tracy? This will be your first boot camp, but I think you're looking forward to it, right?
I think just getting to know the students one-on-one and really being able to focus in on their particular needs and vulnerabilities and trying to meet those specifically, I think is really valuable. I'm looking forward to learning some of the things myself and working with you to increase your personal success quotient, would say. How are you going to come in? How are you going to be in this exam? And how are you going to be a lawyer beyond this exam? And also just the nuts and bolts tools about it, how you get through this and how you do it and how you are successful.
Yeah. Don't hesitate. Please jump in, register, get yourself there. I think it will make a difference. It doesn't matter what jurisdiction you're in. We'll have UB, California, Georgia, and Florida students all there. So lots of opportunities. And really all you got to do is make your deposit for the application. Nothing else is due until for boot camp. And I think we've kept it pretty affordable. So if you have questions, let us know, but encourage you to join us for that boot camp. Again, May 19th and 20th here in Denver. With that, I think we'll jump into some student questions and can see where we are. And Amanda, I know you're watching the chat box, so if there's anything there, just let me know. First question was just a pretty straightforward logistics question. The student had submitted their first essay and said, how do I schedule our first meeting to do that? Really simple. In your online course, you will see a link for Calendly. That's the scheduling program that we use. You just schedule the appointment as soon as you submit the work. And at this point, this is a great time to be doing it because we're all relatively free for the month of April. So this is a great time to be starting and submitting your work. If you have not upgraded, if you're in the basic course and you want to upgrade to coaching, you can do that. The links are in your online course. Amanda, you were a student that was in the coaching program. You worked with me, and I'm not fishing for compliments, but it made a difference, didn't it, for you to have the coaching versus just studying on your own?
Absolutely. I think it's how you get the best use of your time. With that had limited hours to
Yeah.
study.
Yeah.
I didn't have time to be like searching around in the dark and just trying to build. They say fly the plane as I'm learning to fly the plane as I'm building the plane, all that. I didn't have time to do all the things. I just think you get the teacher and someone that resonates with you. We have plenty of choices of good coaches here, and you do that, right? Especially instead of creating bad habits, right? I use a lot of sports analogies. And like, if you hit a bat or shoot a basketball 5,000 times and you do it the wrong way, muscle memory gets in there and it's that much more difficult to correct those mistakes and break bad habits. So I would say start good habits early on, no matter who you're working with. And that includes in your essay writing, in your coaching. Get that advice, learn how to do it correctly from the beginning and practice and use the entire time you have to practice the way instead of starting off one way and then in the middle, "Oh, I need to switch. This way isn't working for me." And I also think sometimes we're not all the time, we're not so objective with ourselves, right? What I maybe thought was a strong suit in my writing turned out to be something I had to change. And it's great to get like an objective third party looking in because you're in it, right? So give yourself some space to be like, I got to put this on somebody else. Else tell me what to do because you all can do it, right? But somebody else can guide you and then you can go execute.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I'll segue over to another question that we got this week. Somebody said, how would the personal writing workshop help me with my writing? One of the preliminary pieces that we offer is a 2-session scheduled with Brianna to work on the mechanics of the writing before you start to the coaching with Tracy or Amanda or me or Brianna. And I really encourage people to do that personal writing workshop. It is really valuable. It's 2 half-hour sessions. The first session is literally Brianna showing you the FLA writing system. And then the second session is you executing that. And you're just looking at the mechanics. You're not trying to understand the law. Then you can upgrade and get coaching with me or Tracy or Amanda or Brianna in these different jurisdictions. And then we have the freedom as coaches. We're not having to worry quite so much about did you understand how to paragraph and structure and do those things, and much more into the actual substance of what you're doing. So, my suggestion to anybody that's in the basic success course is first, set up the personal writing workshop. It's pretty affordable. Schedule those 2 calls with Brianna. After you've done that, then look at upgrading into coaching. Tracy's in California. Amanda and Brianna are coaching UBE, and I'm coaching all of the jurisdictions. The advantages of using Tracy or Amanda or Brianna is you get more calls, but also just a different perspective. If you've had me coaching you previously, I think it's really valuable to switch up. And because the things that I see are not the things that these guys will necessarily see. And it's really valuable to do that. So I encourage you to do that. If you haven't been through the personal writing workshop, boy, it's a big help. And I know for us as coaches, it's really nice when somebody's been through that because then at that point, okay, you understand the mechanics. Now we can get to the good stuff.
There's a big difference, folks, between getting ready intentionally and getting ready in a panic mode.
Yep.
And what I've seen so far is a pattern of going on, oh my gosh, I'm in a panic mode now. I need to get personal coaching now. I need to take the class on photo reading now. I need to figure out how to do mind mapping. That's not the time to do it. And the time to do it is now when you're not in panic mode. so that you can lean into this entire experience. And I can't stress enough how important it is that you go in feeling confident. And if you're going in feeling that you have not had enough time, you've not had enough coaching, you've not had enough preparation, your chances of succeeding are much less than if you start now and you budget and you plan and you know that this is going to cost you some money. It's just the way it is. Um, but look at what the results can be on the other end of it and start now.
Yeah, and I think that really goes to this other question we got, which was somebody was just starting and they said, I feel a little overwhelmed, which I certainly understand. There's a lot coming at you at the beginning. And they said, what's the best way to get started? I'm going to flip that over to you, Amanda, because you've got the most recent experience of having been a student and experiencing all of this. What is the best way to get started as you get into the course?
Yeah. I think that one, you need to think about your time management early on because it's very easy to dive in, right? And kind of think, I'm going to get this and this done, and really just set yourself up for not achieving all those things that you have set out to do. So think about your plan even before you open up that first module or read the first thing is start to think about your plan. How many hours a week are you going to set aside? And I know that Brianna's still offering her time management workshop. If you're having a hard time with figuring out that plan and when you are going to study, right? When is that going to be that sacred time that that's what you're doing? And then just like go through the modules in the order they're laid out. Some tips and tricks that I had for myself trying to get organized because I like to say I'm a type B personality that learned to live in a type A world. I would have papers all over my desk. My house would always be a mess, but type A's are rewarded. I also like rewards. So I learned to do that is if I'm using electronic files, right? I have my mind maps and any notes that I'm taking or anything I'm doing set up in my drives with the different subjects all to the cloud, not on my desktop, not on my laptop where it's going to crash halfway through. And I get those folders early so I can like drop in anything that I see. I can bookmark, right? We have the electronic versions of those files. And if you're like a paper person, right, where is your working space and where are you going to keep those files? Where are you going to keep your written mind maps? So they're easy to access, right? Any barriers that you can remove early on and get with that organization. So, like time organization, physical organization, whether that's like our digital space or our physical space, get those things squared away early, right? Decide how you operate best and then follow the program and the content as laid out there.
Yeah, I think that makes good sense. Tracy, I remember when you were practicing law and your organizational skills were pretty amazing, the way you kept stuff together with all the different cases and things you were doing. And then, of course, when you went to the bench, things got a little different. But what's your thought about organization and structure? Because I think Amanda's got a lot of good ideas.
It's all about finding what works for you and following that pattern each and every time. And it's all about preparation. People think that in TV, it's all about how you actually argue to a jury and if you actually make your speech to the judge. But if you're not prepared, that's going to fall flat on its face very quickly and people can see through that. So it goes back to what Jackson was saying at the very beginning with the student that he talked to that just said, I'm just going to walk in and take this. Law practice doesn't happen that way. Good lawyering doesn't happen that way. And good preparation for this bar exam does not happen that way. You have to set up what your pattern is. Then you have to start learning to follow the pattern and not talking yourself out of the pattern. And then you become where you can trust the pattern. We've talked about building trust one marble at a time. And these are your marbles. So that's all in a way that you prepare.
Yeah. And I think on the question of preparation, we got a couple of questions. One was about photo reading. The other was mind maps. We tend to get these questions every week. One of the questions was, what's the best way to take notes? I see you talking about mind maps. I see you talking about using that. Is that useful? It seems like it takes a long time. I will tell you that I think mind maps are absolutely critical. I have moved from maybe we use them and then, okay, I think we should use them. And then, yeah, I'm pretty much into it to now saying you should be mind mapping. It makes a huge difference. I think that it is the best way to gather all this material and put it together and have it in an accessible way for your brain on test day. Does it take time? Yeah, it does take time, but it's the time you got to invest to be able to understand this material. It's way better than flashcards or mnemonics or memorization. And I see Tracy and Amanda both shaking their heads. Yes. I think mind maps are something you got to learn. And we teach you how to do that. And there are lots of different ways to do it. Amanda, you use mind maps, right? When you were studying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I started off with the traditional note taking before I like learned about mind mapping maybe halfway through the course. And
Okay.
I really wish that I had done it from the beginning.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. So look, if you're debating this, don't. Mind maps are making the difference. And I can see it. And I think as results come out this season, we're going to see that as well. People that mind map tended to do better over the last few exams than people that didn't. And I suspect we're going to see that in a big way from the February 2023 exams. And then to wrap up on these questions around photo reading, yeah, photo reading in my mind is a big advantage. It's a huge tool. Doesn't take long to learn. You can come to boot camp and learn it. You can learn it by through the course in an hour a day for 8 days. And then as you begin to use it, as you will see the benefit. But I think that beyond that is that whether you're a photo reader or not, the key here is using selective intuition. And I'm putting up lots of material about selective intuition. I'm doing everything that I know to encourage you to use that because what I see consistently, particularly on the MBE, is that when people actually use the selective intuition method, their scores jump enormously. When they resist it, when they come to the exam and they freak out and they stop trusting their own intuition and what they've learned and start trying to work from what they've memorized, they're in trouble. It just doesn't get there. And the exam is not built for you to memorize. Remember, even the AI, the chat GPT, went through the bar exam first time and it had access to the entire world of information. And it wasn't until they reprogrammed chat GPT to start taking advantage of a more subtle level of what I would think of as artificial intuition as well as intelligence. Then it went to the 90th percentile. Things changed pretty dramatically. And we're going to talk more about that later in other upcoming weeks. But clearly, you will not be as successful on this exam trying to use your memorization skill as using your intuitive skill and the material you've learned from a deeper level. I really encourage you to check out all of those things. Having said all of that, I didn't get to go to SeaWorld this year or Disney World. I've left Florida, so I'm not in that space. But Tracy, you went to California last week, right? And you had a chance to visit SeaWorld. So you have some thoughts about SeaWorld and the bar exam?
I do. I do. Here's my metaphor for the week. I took
Okay.
my 6 grandkids to SeaWorld, and they range in ages from 10 to 4. We had a marvelous time, but the last time I went to SeaWorld, I remember the dolphin shows and the sea lions and maybe petting the manta rays. But now they have these huge roller coasters at SeaWorld. And this is one that my grandkids, I did go on one, but they wanted me to go on this one. And I said, no way. Absolutely no way am I going on this thing. Now, my grandchildren are when you're looking at the screen, they're at the right of the screen, and they're the first 5 kids were able to go on this thing, and my son. And they said, Grands, come on, you've got to get on this roller coaster. And I said, not on your tin type. Somebody has to take the picture. Somebody has to take a picture. Now, this thing, it climbs up. And just think about the last time you went on a roller coaster. You get there and you're anticipating, but you're a little bit scared and you're having to talk yourself through it. Am I going to die on this thing or is this thing going to be okay? Then, of course, you have to tell yourself that millions of people have been on this ride and maybe only 2 have died in the last year. So it's probably safe. But it climbs up this this agonizingly slow incline that goes up 14 stories in the air. And then this particular cage where you're hooked in sits over the precipice for 5 seconds before it drops you the 14 stories. And you go either one way or you go the other way. And one cart will go one way and then the next one will go the other way. But so here's the metaphor, right? So you're starting off, you're studying for the bar exam and you're excited, you're a little excited, you're wondering if you're going to live through it. You know that other people have gone through it and have been successful, and you know that some have not been successful. But you get yourself there and you got that thing in the pit of your stomach when you're putting the bar down over you and you're like, oh my gosh, why did I sign up for this? This is never going to work. I'm going to throw up. I'm going to die. I'm going to pass out. All these things that happen. And then you start climbing. You're climbing. You can feel the anticipation mounting and you're, oh, how am I going to do this? And then you're sitting over the precipice, which is where so many of you are now waiting for your scores to come in. And when those scores come, you're going to drop. You're going to drop 14 stories and you're either going to go, wee, and you're going to do the corkscrews and you're going to be so happy, or you're going to be saying, oh my God, the whole other way, and I'm never going to get on this again. I encourage you to understand that we are the ones that are on the ground taking the pictures of you. You're the ones that are on the roller coaster, but we are trusting. I put my grandkids on this, trusting that they're going to be okay. We're trusting that you're going to be okay. We're trusting that when you fall, you're going to be okay, whether you go into the wee part or the, oh my God, I'm not going to live through this part, which would be if you get a score that is not the one that you wanted. Just remember that you can get off this ride and get back on it. And the second time, it's not nearly as scary. You can talk about it excitedly. You can have memories that you're making because that you've done this amazing thing, which is study for the bar exam and actually sit for the bar exam. And you should be very proud of that. Like my 10-year-olds, my 8-year-old, and my 6-year-old were when they got off that.
Thanks, Tracy. And that's true.
Just another question came in too, and I
Go
absolutely
ahead.
love that analogy. So this student says, I have not passed by a minimal amount each time that they've taken the exam. I am strong in writing. The MBA kills me. I think it's best to
Mhm.
try to up my score in writing, though. I have specific topics that I have room for growth in writing. How can I make this happen if I sign up for coaching?
Yeah, I think for somebody who is retaking the exam in the course, you can pick the writing pieces that you want or the subjects that you want to work in. I have been doing a lot of work recently, even in the coaching calls, on multiple choice questions, and we can work with you on those as well. So there's wherever we can pick up the points for you, we want to do that. And we'll be glad to help tailor that coaching. I think it's a question of picking the coach that can work with you. If you're in the UBE jurisdiction, I would really encourage you to work with Amanda or to work with Brianna. They are really good and they're successful at this. I'm pretty good at it too. To do that, if you're in California, working with Tracy is a great option as well. So, yeah, we'll help tailor it for you. We actually had a student before the last exam who really wanted to work on performance tests the weekend before the exam. And he just worked with Brianna and they put in 8 hours of coaching time in the weekend before the exam, just doing performance tests. So, certainly possible to do that. So, thanks for that question. It's a good one. My stomach is coming out of my throat, back down into my stomach. Just even looking at those pictures of the roller coaster terrify me. But I understand that. It's a great analogy. It really is. And I think that's a good one for where we are. We are at the precipice for a lot of you. And we hope that the results are favorable and exciting and really get the opportunity to share your stories of victory and your stories of success. For those that have a different outcome, we still love you. We will work with you. We believe in you. This is not the time to give up, no matter how frustrating and scary it is. Just continue the process. Let us continue to work with you and help you. That's why we've set up the course the way that we have. And you're still pretty darn successful to you and be in a position to take the exam. So that's the good news. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Tracy and Amanda. Appreciate you guys being with me as always. Look forward to having Brianna and June back with us again next week. We're going to have a lot to talk about, I'm sure, as the Florida results come out. Hope everybody has a safe and restful and successful week ahead of them and a wonderful holiday weekend if you're celebrating. And with that, we're going to say bye-bye. We'll see you again next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.